When is it time to go? If you've had a sort of blessed career like Boris, maybe you simply don't know. Maybe you haven't got the experience of seeing when it's time to go. Ideally, you should go before the curtain comes down. We're not all like Ken Dodd. We don't linger on and on. And even Ken Dodd felt that he wanted to give people their money's worth. And actually his audiences loved the fact that they missed the last bus or the last train. But when is it time to go? Why should Boris even think of staying? Well, Boris has set up a cabinet around the table in number 10, a cabinet of curiosities of lesser beings. His fault entirely. It's a huge failing that the people who are there potentially to replace him are inadequate. If you think Boris is a problem, look at the possibility of a Liz Truss premiership, or even worse, a Priti Patel premiership, or Dominic Raab premiership. You know, he'd probably fall asleep halfway through the Queen's speech, or be slapping on more factor 10. At what point should Boris have gone? Because, of course, he should already have gone. But he could only go when he was sure that his successor was going to be of a better quality than himself. And he knows. He's intelligent enough to know that the successors gathered around the cabinet table are dross. And yet he has been stupid enough, and this is his failing, he's been stupid enough not to promote the right people to places of authority, to experience, so that somebody with honour could take over, so that somebody with experience and honour could take over. There are a handful of people around that table with honour, but most of them have jobs which makes it very difficult for them to bid for the top office. Most of them, like Chris Heaton-Harris, it's impossible for him to bid to be Prime Minister. He would make an excellent Prime Minister, by the way. Jeremy Hunt, at a pinch, might make an interesting Prime Minister. It would be a bit like having a second-rate bank manager running the country. A little bit like Rishi Sunak. Could Rishi Sunak do the job? No, of course not. He is admired in scandal. It doesn't matter how much he bribes the public. He is admired in scandal. I actually have a secret liking for Rishi Sunak. But he fails at every point, except when he's handing out money. It's not the Chancellor's job to hand out money. It's the Chancellor's job to reassure the country that our finances, that our money is doing the right job. I don't believe he has that capacity. He has the capacity to put his hand in his pocket and hand out some charity. 222, that's what we should think of. Don't forget that number. He is number 222 on the rich list. He's too rich to know what failure is. When do we go? We go when the sniping gets so bad that it's impossible to stay. Has Boris had that experience? I have no idea. Maybe he's been so protected. But he's had a number of failed marriages. And even there, I think maybe he lingered longer than he should have done. You go when the sniping gets too bad. And when you cannot get your department to function or to do their jobs. And you look around the cabinet table. You look at those departments in which Boris has interfered. Matt Hancock. It's extraordinary to think of somebody interfering with Matt Hancock. It wasn't just Gina Coladangelo who had somebody's hands in the wrong places. Boris was getting involved in the health ministry. Boris shouldn't have had to do that. In other words, Matt Hancock wasn't doing his job. Liz Truss demonstrably couldn't do her job, and Boris was the one going off to Ukraine. Priti Patel, utterly incapable of doing her job, and yet Boris kept her on. Why? Maybe because the sniping went in her direction rather than in his. Sunak, Boris has tried to interfere with his job as well. Nadine Dorries, has Boris interfered with Nadine Dorries? I really don't think. Actually, I have no idea. I think Boris would take the view that Nadine Dorries' department isn't worth interfering with. Boris has contempt for the arts. Great shame, given the fact that his mother is an artist. And you know, again, I had great hopes for somebody who had actually published books. I've even read some of her books. I struggled, but I have even read some of her books. But in the end, she just doesn't have her mind on the job, and she doesn't answer her letters. I had a very interesting contact with somebody today who pointed out that she'd written a letter to her MP and got an auto form back saying, am I your MP? Refer to my form letter. Simply shocking. An MP is elected by the people. If an MP cannot answer the letters that the constituents write to her or to him, then that MP should resign. It is the MP's job to respond to the constituents. That is their first job. Clowning around Westminster is a secondary job. The first job is to respond to the constituents and then to represent the constituents in Parliament. So let's look at other reasons. So the main one, if juniors in your department are no longer expressing confidence in what you are doing, if they fail to turn up to your meetings, if they go on in their own way disregarding you. I don't know whether all of this is something Boris might have noticed, but if he has, then he should have gone. And if he hasn't noticed this, maybe he's blind to what's going on around him. Maybe he's so protected by the little cadre that he's assembled. And we know Boris appoints people who are less able than he is because it makes him look better. If you're going to do a top job, you must be brave enough to appoint people who are significantly more capable than you are. That makes you look good. The sniping when it gets out of hand. And if you sense that at any point when you leave, the job is worse off than it was when you took it on, then you should get out fast. And I'm afraid that is definitely what's happening to Boris. When Boris leaves, number 10 will be worse off than it was when he found it. And I did not think it was possible for anything to be worse in number 10 than under Mrs. May's premiership. I thought Mrs. May was the worst Prime Minister we have ever had. I am wrong. I'm wrong. She's been eclipsed by her successor.